All right, we're live, everybody. Hello, hello, hello. Tara Bachland here with the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism. And we are getting rolling with another podcast. And there we go. We are on Instagram to success. Yay. We're streaming to multiple platforms today. So good to virtually see all of you. Again, I'm Tara Bachland with the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism. You've likely seen me elsewhere, but today we're going to be speaking primarily about what's going on at the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism, along here with my colleague Alberto Carbo.
Hey, everyone.
And if you tune in regularly, usually you see me and Alberto doing herbs in Spanglish. I think, at least for me, I'm grateful we'll only be English today. I love our Spanglish episodes, but they take some extra brain power, at least for me. So today will be, again, part of our series on becoming an herbalist. Those of you who follow the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism may already be on a track to becoming an herbalist, and probably many of you are learning, but maybe, just kind of feeling out where you're going, and maybe a handful of you are wondering, how do I, quote, become an herbalist? And that's what this series is all about, because we can follow our passions and sometimes, oddly enough, applying them and bringing them into our lives, and especially professionally, can be challenging. And so this series, Becoming an Herbalist, which started with a series of interviews with a number of our teachers at the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism, is to help inspire and inform you of how you can take your herbal passion into a profession, whether that's serving your community, your family, friends, and community, or professionally as a paid profession. And so Alberto has followed this path, and I think we could all agree too that the path really doesn't end until you're, no longer here anymore. And so it's always unveiling itself. And where we ended the last interview was actually me interviewing Alberto about his experience to becoming an herbalist. And what developed from that as well was coming up with ideas of how a person might apply their herbal skills. So I encourage you to go check out those episodes. If you're wondering if hearing stories is a way for you to really imagine and participate, definitely check out the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism YouTube page. Make sure to like and subscribe and turn on the notifications, because we do live shows like this at least once a week. And you can join us live and put in your comments and questions, and we love hearing from you as well. So this is the last episode that I spoke of. This was actually a Spanglish and Becoming an Herbalist episode. And we have Susan Leopold of the United Plant Savers. We also have our wonderful teacher, Lori Rose, whom I interviewed, Jennifer Tucker, who's been practicing for many years, and also many earlier episodes. As you'll see, these images help indicate which ones are part of the Becoming a Herbalist series. And so I hope you check those out as well. But today we're just going to share some ideas from what we've seen, what we've experienced, others, how they've applied their herbal knowledge to their community and making it a profession as well. Alberto, I think it'd be worth just kind of doing a brief overview of what you shared in your interview, because yours is unique and also in the same at the same time kind of a standard path of how you became an herbalist and how you joined us at the MWH team as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think my story is typical, maybe, of a lot of herbalists, at least that I've talked to, in that many of us first are interested in herbs and holistic health because of personal health reasons and just wanting to improve our own personal health or support our own personal health. And so for me, I was born with hemophilia. It's a hereditary blood disorder. And so where blood doesn't clot as easily. So that, ever since I was like 14, 15. I started just kind of looking into alternative ways of supporting my well-being. And that led me eventually to plants. And with my first experience with holistic or with medicinal plants, being in the Peruvian jungle, in the Amazon, and working with a local curandero there. So that inspired me to then eventually, not right away, but eventually things had to percolate, and eventually that inspired me to pursue uh, a path of with the plants, learning more about the plants, and eventually helping others with the knowledge that I learned about the plants. And so it is a very typical path. I've talked to many herbalists who share that same, in their own unique way, share that same story of, I wanted to improve my own health, and then with that knowledge, then I wanted to help others. Um, and there are of course herbalists who just had interest without having maybe the necessity or the desire to improve their health to the same extent. But I think that is a general underlying theme for anyone. Anyone would appreciate better health, or maintaining their health if they already have good health. Maintaining their health for as long as possible is something that I think everyone would see as important. So yeah, that's kind of a recap there of my story. Um, but I think it does highlight one of those important principles of herbalism, that is um, taking care of yourself, and then in taking care of yourself, you can then better take care of those around you and those that are important to you. If you can't, if your health is, if your health suffers, you're not going to be able to support your family and your friends as well as if you're flourishing in health. So um, that is definitely one of the, I think, the pillars of herbalism, um, in that it is holistic, and it's not just a selfish or selfless, but something that takes into consideration the health of all those involved, including that of the plants and nature, where of course we get our medicine.
Absolutely. Yes, and I find that each time I hear someone's story, and you'll hear this in the interviews for those of you who listen to the interviews as well, there are commonalities, but there are also so many unique characteristics, which make it so interesting and fun. And like I mentioned in the beginning, it's so interesting that, you know, it's life too. It's not just an herbalism, but sometimes you might set a goal, like you went to a local school where you learned herbalism from an herbalist, and you might have seen yourself, progressing month by month, quarter by quarter, year by year. But sometimes beyond that goal of graduating, you kind of have to almost blindly follow, your intuition and opportunities that come up. And so while we're going to give some examples, um, just know that that's a commonality that I kept hearing, and we'll still be doing more interviews with people as well, to follow that inner guidance, and definitely set those goals. If you are taking classes of course, we offer classes at the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism, and we're opening up doors. We've just opened up doors again for the year one program. There are so many inklings, so many, I've heard them called niggles before, that just kind of speak to you and encourage you to follow those. We're going to go over a few categories, assuming maybe you just got into herbalism and it's really piquing your interest. Maybe you had your own healing journey already. Maybe herbs helped you to heal from something. And just assuming maybe you don't know all this vocabulary, we're going to go into it with some structure here. So we've outlined that, of course, herbalism, it's very naturally that it starts with yourself, right? You discover herbs for yourself, maybe for a loved one, but oftentimes it is for yourself. And so there are different stages, and whether you go to the end stage or not is not the point, is that you find your place. The point of this discussion is to help you find your place in in your journey. There's also what is called a community herbalist, and that means that you're helping family and friends and acquaintances, and it might be paid and it might not be. And we'll get into some examples. There, you might hear also the term clinical herbalist, and that typically means that you are seeing clients in a clinic. The clinic might also be your home office, and it's typically people that you don't know. Maybe they've been referred to you. And so you'll hear some examples as we go into those details. And so know that there are places for you all along the way. Alberto, do you have anything else that you would like to share? There's a few more notes on community herbalist. What does a community herbalist mean to you?
Yeah, a community herbalist to me is someone who is studying herbs, learning about them. And I mean, you're continually studying and learning about the herbs, no matter what level of um, herbalist you are, but someone who is, maybe more adept than a beginner, someone who has been using herbs for themselves and maybe their close acquaintances, their family, their close friends for a while. I don't know if I can give a time frame, but maybe for at least a year, I would say in that you get the opportunity to use herbs in different seasons and with different ailments that come with those seasons, like colds and maybe improving heat tolerance in the summer or things like this. So at least practicing in that sense of helping yourself, but then you're helping those around you. And so at that point of becoming a community herbalist, you start getting maybe what we could call referrals from your close acquaintances, from your close friends, from your family. And so they are people who you perhaps already do know, but not as well. And so that causes you to step out of your comfort zone in terms of people you don't know as well, but you're still not necessarily charging, or if you are, it's a small fee or maybe an exchange or something like that.
There's a big education component I see also in the community herbalist realm, and it's actually a nice progression. Whether you become a clinical herbalist or not, the common thread that I heard through these interviews is that not only when you teach, you learn on a deeper level, but also that's how the majority of practicing herbalists get their clients, is because they're teaching out in the community. So it's a real natural progression that you start as a community herbalist, help, whether it's paid or not, helping family and friends. We have, it might even be teaching kids, your own kids within your own family. That's, or maybe having some kind of event and class. There's all sorts of ways. So let's, we have a list here, and I think usually I wouldn't read a list, but I think it just progresses very naturally if we were, and then maybe roll from there. So of course, holistic medicine starts with taking care of yourself. And so this is often, they call it the healer's journey, right? You have your own health ailment, and through that health ailment, you learn what you might not have otherwise learned. Usually, a lot of people will go through this occurrence, and it happened for me, for sure. For example, since I was a child, I had skin issues, real painful skin issues, digestion issues, and resulting issues that I've gone into in other podcasts. And, the medical community didn't have answers for me. And so the natural progression was to look elsewhere. And I didn't even know what herbalism was. It was just a matter of looking up the conditions, the symptoms I was experiencing, and finding dietary solutions, eventually herbal solutions. I was actually apprenticing with a local herbalist at her herb shop, and I didn't even know what an herbalist was. One day I remember asking her, "What do I call you if I'm telling people that I'm helping you out here? What do I say?" And she's like, "Well, I used to be a nurse, but you could call me an herbalist." And then pieces started coming together. It started making a little bit more sense. And I share that story too because it was years later that I started working on helping Matthew Wood to build the online Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism as it is today, and as it continues to develop. And while I was really fascinated by the health and wellness realm and herbalism, and I just knew inside that I didn't really want to be a consulting herbalist, but I wanted to work in the health and wellness arena. And it was kind of, as life goes along, you follow those instincts, those curiosities, and a decade or so later, here I am helping to build an online institute. And so that's just one example. I would still also consider myself a community herbalist because, just this morning and last night, I was texting with my best friend who, has a real serious sinus infection and stuff, and just, offering some solutions that might be helpful. And she's very open to it. I always make sure that people are open to it. And so there are so many ways that this can all develop. And it's very common that it starts with some kind of ailment that with you or your family that you're learning to overcome. Just like Alberto said too, that was yours. Do you feel that are your family and friends pretty open to herbal solutions, or how,
Yeah, it fluctuates. I think for the most part they are. Some not as much, but even the ones that are, I've learned to that to always ask first. If your advice is welcome, because sometimes people just don't want to hear it, and that's okay too. But yeah, people generally are open. And yeah, on that education piece, I think it's so important. As it sounds funny to say that it falls into the first step of the herbal path, but it does, and it also goes along the way with you as you continue, if you want to, into a community herbalist and then a clinical herbalist. The education piece is so important. And if we think about our long history on Earth, like herbs and plants are the oldest medicine that we have ever used. And for a very, very long time, we learned about the medicinal plants from a young age and throughout our whole lives. And it was the knowledge of plants was so ingrained into our communities that it was part of the culture. And that has been lost. It didn't die out, thankfully, but it definitely has been lost at a mainstream cultural level in today's world. And so I think the teaching piece is so important, because, as you said, when you teach it to someone else, and when I'm talking about teaching right now, I'm talking about any level of teaching. Just you learn something about an herb, and then you go and tell your best friend or your brother or your sister or your spouse, and as you're telling them about what you learned, you either realize like, oh, I really understood that, I can explain it easily, or like, oh, actually I need to go revisit that because I can't explain it, and then you do, and then you understand it better. And so this is just so important, because I think as an herbalist, I would love to see for that cultural interweaving of herbs and plants as medicines into our cultural sphere, mainstream cultural sphere. I would like to see that happen again. I think it's so important, not just for the well-being of the people, but also for the well-being of the planet, because the more that we commune with nature and take care of it, the more that we will feel responsible for it and not squander it or defile it the way that our society has been for quite a while now. And so that first level of herbalism is learning, but teach and learning so that you can help yourself improve your own health, and improve the health of your family, like with your kids, if you have kids, or if you're an aunt or uncle, or you have friends with kids. Herbs can support the well-being of your family very well, and can help you avoid visits to the doctor or the emergency, especially if you are helping to prevent certain issues from becoming worse than they are, because you're addressing them as soon as you recognize them. And that comes with, of course, education, and of course that level of herbalism as well. You can support people in your family who are elderly, who their quality of life is decreasing. Many people have had these experiences with loved ones whose family quality of life decreases as they get older, and herbs can be very supportive in that environment as well. So even though you may not think you know a lot, you can help yourself in big ways and those around you in big ways to generally improve the health and well-being of your family and close friends, and increase awareness about the natural world.
It's a lot of fun too. I remember, was it last summer, maybe even the summer before, my friend and her daughters, who are our goddaughters, came over, and we were really blessed to have a number of really wonderful herbs growing just in our yard. And we did a plant walk. And I think one of the most rewarding things about teaching, especially in your community, just with your family, friends, and in your community, is seeing people's faces light up, when they first make those connections, like, oh, I've seen plantains all over the place, and they're like, I'm not going to mow my lawn for a week, and I'm going to collect the dandelions and let them grow. And likewise with kids, I mean, they catch on so fast. They get the concept and they remember. It's really amazing, and it's fun too when you can, the herbs, and you do the tasting and the sensing the herbs and learn really tactily. And I was absolutely amazed by our goddaughters. We had baby motherwort, which is really bitter. And they were like, And now, granted, my friend, it really feeds them quite a variety of foods, so they're accustomed to quite a variety of flavors. But they remembered, and like the next year, it must have been a couple years ago, because they remembered a number of them. But I think the funniest thing in a way also was, as soon as I mentioned, we were kind of picnicking under the willow trees, and then I said, we're going to go for a walk around the yard and we're going to get to know the plants. And right away, they just start wandering around to the one patch of poison ivy. And I'm like, wait, not over there. And I was like, I'm going to show you from a distance. I don't want them to be afraid either, but I was like, wait, don't go too far. It was just like, it was like, the spirits of the poison ivy were like, come over here. And it was comical in that kind of way, but they didn't get it on them or anything like that. But that it is really fun to see those ahas, and it happens at any age. It's really really a lot of fun. So definitely, if you're, I'm going to put in air quotes here, simply or just an herbalist within your family and in your community, you're doing wonderful work. Just imagine how many people you affect just by affecting one person, and then they affect a couple of people. It is really very rewarding work.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, on the point about the kids, like, they're the next generation. So the more we can teach them, the more they will bring this into our culture in future years.
Yeah. Now, your kids are pretty little, but do they have certain remedies that they ask for yet?
Yep, for sure. We use probably what we use the most is a yarrow liniment. I just make it with rubbing alcohol,
Mhm.
and so it's only for topical use, and it works really well for bruises and bumps. To the point where a big goose egg will be forming, and you put the yarrow liniment, and then it just dissipates, and there's no goose egg anymore. And yeah, so my kids, anytime they hurt themselves, they ask for it.
That's so neat. So the education part, I think that can follow you to any level of herbalism, whatever level you go to, but certainly the earlier stages, it's great for your own education. It's very rewarding, and it's also, as if you're starting to practice, a great way to earn the trust of new clients as well. So these different levels of herbalism also denote a different levels of education. And a couple of the teachers that we work with at the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism, Matthew Wood himself, and then also another one of the more prominent teachers, Phyllis D. Light, who also has her own online school, the American Institute of Naturopathy. They both mention that to be an herbalist, you don't need to know 25 herbs, but if you know one herb and you can use it 25 ways, you're an herbalist. And that's pretty reassuring in a way, and to know that you know because there are many practitioners too, there are many traditions that, and maybe like an interview that Matthew did with a woman from Iceland, they only have like 14, or she only works with 14 or 15 herbs because there's actually quite a limited selection and where she lives. And so it's actually quite amazing. It makes you wonder, does the plant actually have the constituents to help, or is part of it the intention of the practitioner? There are kind of these mysteries to herbs as well that make it continually interesting. But what I was getting at is, with community herbalism, with clinical herbalism, they're much like other professions, there are different levels of training. And so for helping your family, you might just start off with taking a few classes here and there. So for example, at the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism, we offer a simple a family herbalist course, or the first aid course. You might just take a few courses here and there, or you might choose to then take a full program. And like I mentioned earlier, at the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism, we just opened up doors once again, for the first year program. And it is bigger and better than the last time. We're just always working on improving the program. And so now through February 11th, when you enroll now through February 11th, you can save $1,000. So I'm not going to go into it all in detail, but that is certainly something worth mentioning and checking out. And we also have early sign-up bonuses, and payment plans are available. And so our early offers are always our best offers. So make sure to check that out if that's something that seems of interest to you. So in a full program like this, you're going to really take a deep dive. And there are local programs, like Alberto joined a local teacher, and there are online programs. But if you do a full, a community herbalist, especially as a year long, you're going to really take a deep dive. And then at the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism, we're working on developing actually year 1, which is ready, year 2, which is right on the heels, and a year 3 program, which by the time you graduate the year 3 program, you'll be a clinical herbalist. And so, Alberto, how would you delineate the difference between a community and a clinical herbalist?
Yeah, so community herbalist, as we said, was helping in the community on a broader level than just your personal circle. And a clinical herbalist is someone who probably has studied for a longer amount of time, and then they open up a practice and they start seeing clients in clinic, whether that clinic is from their home or in a public in an actual clinic. So it is, the difference is, and usually they are charging for it, so that they're making their living by being a clinical herbalist. And that's, I would say, the biggest difference, in terms of like logistical difference, but in terms of more nuanced things. For example, I think the clinical herbalist has more confidence in addressing a broader variety of issues that may show up in clinic. They may have more tools at their disposal, or have no more ways of using the same herbs to support somebody. And although it's important to say that when you're starting out your clinical practice, you may not feel very confident. You may feel like you don't know enough. But that comes with time and experience. And so the more people that you see, the more clients that you see, what at the community herbalist level, and then into a clinical herbalist level, you start gaining that confidence, and you start understanding in the ways in which you work best. So yeah, I would say a clinical herbalist, to sum it up, would be someone who is more dedicated in terms of time allotment, and how much time they're dedicating on a weekly, monthly basis to their craft, and they are helping a broader spectrum of people and conditions.
That's a great summary. As we've been developing our programs as well, I've been getting a much closer look. Now, these programs are specifically curated by Matthew Wood. So, author of at least 13 books, it might be 14 now, and practicing for decades, just really renowned, speaks all over the world. And these programs are developed specifically by Matthew Wood, and the majority of the content is also taught by Matthew, as well as specially chosen teachers who may have more specialties in certain areas. And, getting this close look at what goes into these programs is actually quite astounding. We're finding that in the year one program, for example, and this is just to illustrate the in-depth study. So if some more in depth, this may intrigue you. And those of you who are also maybe looking to herbalism, and maybe trying to find your own practitioner, asking what type of education that they've sought and gone through, this might help provide some insight. So for example, for our year one program, the average person is spending about 12 to 15 hours a week in study, some up to 20. It depends on what your background is. So for example, those who were previously in the nursing field, for example, they already understand some of the medical terminology. Someone who might have been working in gardens and plants and botany would already have that material, a good handle on that material. So it's a solid part-time education that just for year one, and is looking like year two will be a bit more rigorous than that, and year three will be on par with that as well. So Matthew Wood, those of you who have read his books, you can get an idea that these programs are robust, and you can be confident that you're going to be learning this content in depth. So like I said, whether you're considering education for yourself, or maybe you're looking for a practitioner, those are things that you may be curious about, what's entailed in this. Once you get up to the clinical level also, it looks like our program will be partially curriculum based as far as your time spent, and then part of it will be actually doing clinical work. So likely working side by side with an herbalist, getting feedback on your own consultations. It's a very in-depth field of study and work, because obviously working with people on their well-being is a big responsibility, and you want to do it properly. And a lot of people ask also, how do I get a certificate to be an herbalist, whether they're inquiring with us at the Institute or not? A lot of people ask this question: how do I become a quote certified herbalist? And currently in the United States, and I'm speaking only of the United States at this time, there is no um, regulating body for herbalism. And there are agencies, however, that are accreditation agencies. So this is very similar. Maybe you come from a background of yoga, for example. It's very similar in the yoga realm, or personal training, I think, is similar, where you can get a certificate from a school, and then you can be certified by an accrediting agency. But the government itself doesn't have an accreditation process like nursing or the medical field. You might be your registered nurse or a licensed nurse or practitioner. There is not that kind of accreditation for herbalism at this time. And that actually gives quite a bit of freedom for herbal practitioners, but it also puts the responsibility on the consumer and also the practicing herbalist to make sure that they have a very sound education to stand on as they're working with people. So that's a big question that comes up often: how to become a certified herbalist. With the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism, you'll receive a certificate from the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism with the details also of your passing grade hours that you can apply to an accrediting agency. So just kind of wrapping up some common questions that come up all in one in this episode of how to become an herbalist. So I think the community herbalist and clinical herbalist are what most people think of, or maybe are familiar with when they think of an herbalist. But what I'm excited about is talking about the many other ways there are to quote be an herbalist. And an example is by Matt and Phyllis's terms. I'm an herbalist, but I don't see clients. Like I said, I help friends and family, and then I do my work in this online business to help bring it all together. Where I knew some about herbalism when I started, but I certainly have learned a lot over the years working with Matthew. And we were very, very fortunate to have a terrific team of people, including Alberto, who are actually quite knowledgeable in herbalism. And so there are many other ways that you might find yourself applying your skills, particularly if you're a person that doesn't see yourself working with clientele. So I've been talking a while.
Yeah.
Alberto, do you want to share some of your ideas?
Yeah, I was going to say, especially too, because it was my experience, and I've met people like this too, that when you're starting out your herbal journey, you maybe don't fully know what you want to do with it. You're intrigued by the herbs. You're intrigued because you're helping yourself, or you're looking for ways to help yourself or someone close to you. And you have a passion for the herbs and for well-being. But especially if you've never been in a clinical setting or been a clinician, it's kind of hard to even think about what that actually means.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so to think like, oh, I want to be a clinical herbalist, it almost, for a time, I myself had to kind of stop thinking that, because I'm like, I don't even know what that means, but I'll just keep following this thread of the plants and learning about them and how they help the body. And I can decide that later on. And for a while I wondered, well, what else would I do with this information, right? But there is actually so much that you can do. And especially as herbs make a comeback into our society, and make themselves a staple medicine in our society once again, then the scope of what you can do with herbs and the knowledge of using herbs is just going to grow and grow and grow. And so some of the things that you could do are, for example, being a shop assistant at a local herb shop, or eventually you could have your own herb shop, of course. And you would be surprised if you've never been to an herb shop. Like, so many people come to the herb shop asking for help, asking for, I have this going on. What herb do I take, or what do I do? So there's a huge opportunity to work with herbs and support the local community with herbs, but also continue to learn while you're doing so. Um, then there's like the opportunity to work in the wellness department of a co-op, which of course, people who are going to co-ops are already wellness minded. They want to eat healthy, and so if you can add another layer to that and teach them about herbs and what they can do with that, then we're bringing back the education piece and something else that you can do with that herbal knowledge. Um, and of course, if you were to own a shop, at some point you can complement with other products like books, massage services, or other types of holistic minded services. And some of the things that you could do as well would be more focused on education. So there are so many levels of education. There are more professional levels of education that could be pursued, down to just simply having workshops where you're teaching people who are local people or online who are interested about certain topics, or using herbs as medicine in a more general sense. Um, and of course, that includes herb walks. People love herb walks, especially even people that don't know anything about herbs. They get excited for herb walks because they see the plants, they walk by the plants, and they wish, I wish I knew what to do. I wish I knew which herb to pick. I wish and then they go on an herb walk with you, and you point out some of the most common weeds that they all know. They've all seen them. They've all probably ripped them out of the ground at some point, and they go, "Wow! Like, oh, wow! This is medicinal. I had no idea." And so, um, herb walks are a fantastic way to teach, to continue learning, and to propagate the herbal knowledge. Um, but of course, as a business, it could be a business as well, if you're not wanting to be a clinician. And then, of course, creating herbal products. Uh, there is the potential here is huge. There are, of course, many well-known herbal companies that we probably have all bought products from at one point or another. So it could be as big as that, but it could be on the scale of just making enough products seasonally with what's available to you, and going to a craft fair, um, and selling your products there. But just to give you examples of how simple it can be, there is, for example, Rosemary Gladstar started, I don't know how many years ago, I think like over 30 years ago, she started the company Traditional Medicinals, which is a tea company that so many people know, even people that are not into herbs, medicinal herbs, or know anything about medicinal herbs. They've all, many of them have had a traditional medicinals tea. Um, and it's as far as I know, it's just a tea company, so it's just tea. But the Rosemary Gloucester, of course, is a pillar in the herbal community, and so she did a really great job of growing her business. And another last summer at the Outaouais Herb Gathering that happened here in near Ottawa, Canada, where I live, I met a local gentleman who started his own tea company, and so he makes teas. He makes over 30 different types of tea from foraged and as well as locally grown herbs. And he started in his house, just growing what he could, mostly foraging. Um, and I think within 5 years, he was able to purchase a farm, and so now he has scaled his business. And he's still only selling tea, but it's amazing how successful you can be, and also how wonderful, because whoever the people that are buying teas from him are getting a really unique product, and one that is local. So just to give you an example, his name is Keoki White Dug, and you can check him out. Metagoman Agriculture is the name of his business. Yeah, and then there's an apothecary that and the more you know about herbs, so this all comes back to education, because as if you decide, or if you're not sure, but you don't, eventually, let's say you decide, I don't want to be a clinician, but you have taken the clinical training path, and you've taken the apprentice essentially to be a clinical herbalist, but you decide, you know what, in the end, I don't want to be a clinician. It's not for me. Then it doesn't mean that it was all in vain. It means that now you have all of that knowledge, and you can find a way to use it and to help others through ways that are not as direct as being in clinic. And so another way would be, and this is for the folks out there who really like the preparation of herbs. Some of us herbalists really love that part of herbalism. Others don't love it as much. It's personalities, I guess, but if that's something that you like, you could start your own apothecary, and this apothecary, you could make different products for sale to the public, or you could be more specialized and make herbal medicines for sale to practitioners and clinics. And if you want a really good example of someone who has successfully done that, check out Faunus, Faunus Herbs, Faunus Herbs. And they are an apothecary who sells mostly to professionals. So, yeah, I'm just checking the list to see if there's anything else that I haven't touched on, but essentially, don't pigeonhole yourself in thinking that if I study herbalism, the only option is to be a clinical herbalist. There are so many avenues. And those are just some ideas, like, as I mentioned, as the herbalism continues to grow and get intertwined with our society, once again, the scope of these possibilities is going to continue to grow as well. And I'm sure plenty of creative people out there will have ideas that I haven't even thought of. But yeah, just don't think that you just have to be in clinic. There's so much you can do with herbs, with the knowledge, and then especially, of course, with teaching and propagating the knowledge about herbal medicines and how amazing they are.
That was wonderful. Well put. It's so true, especially with today and the technology that we have available to us. You're not limited to just what's in your town. I mean, for example, I live in Minnesota, you live in Canada, and while they are neighboring, they're neighboring states and countries. We're actually miles and miles apart, and we work together on a daily basis. I mean, there's so much opportunity these days, and these lists that we're providing are by no means exhaustive. They're just hopefully to help spark some ideas. And absolutely put your questions and comments in the comments and let us know maybe what you're thinking, what ideas it sparked for you. This is specifically, this is what is left out of, when you go to college, they don't necessarily teach you how to work in the field that you're going to work in, right? You have to get out in the job market and basically learn how to put yourself out there. And especially if you're going to be an independent worker, not work for someone, that is, there are other skills to learn. And so what I'm aiming to do with this Becoming an Herbalist, or How to Become an Herbalist series, is to inspire and inform. And so there's another list. Wait, we've got to, there's more. I'm just going to wrap up quick with another list of ideas. And this is, really, this is how life goes, right? This is not anything too novel, but it's just applying it to another industry. And what I mean is, we all go through life and we learn a certain basic set of skills and we have certain talents. And then we go into the job market or start working for ourselves and we learn more about that. It's dinner time. And yeah, I'll be right there. and we learn more skills and apply ourselves in other ways, and we end up combining our skills, talents, and sometimes hobbies become professions later on over the years. And so this is another list to help spark your mind. So take maybe you're in the job market, right? And maybe you're in marketing, maybe you're in sales, maybe you're in nursing. There's a lot of people in nursing gravitate towards herbalism. It's a very natural progression. People in the food industry, uh, writing, editing, blogging, copywriting, accounting, all of those can be combined in some way with herbalism, and you could start your own business, and there might actually be a company that already exists that could use your help. So for example, Alberto has a varied background as well. Worked previously in the food industry, is an excellent writer as well, has his herbal education background, and his skills really came together along with a terrific attitude to help us in a number of ways at the Matthew Institute of Herbalism and also related sites that they work on, like the American Institute of Naturopathy. And so that's an example. He's a great example of combining these attributes. You'll find recipes, wonderful recipes at the Matthew Institute of Herbalism that Alberto has come up with, and with very interesting herbal insights, working with herbs themselves, and applying that knowledge is really helpful, really fascinating. So, some of these might be natural. You might think, oh, I'm in sales. Okay, I could work for a company and do their sales. Okay, that might be a natural progression. Nursing, there's usually in nursing too, there's specialties, right? You might work with geriatrics or children or heart conditions, and that is a talent that you could also take into herbalism and perhaps even have a specialty practice. So, these days, with all the information and resources available, having a niche business, and by niche, I mean something that's really specific, like an herbal practice that helps people with maybe more of the cardiovascular system. You'll gain other clients to come in with other things as well, but you'll likely, or fertility is a big one, for example. And so having a specialty can be very, very helpful as well. And marketing, of course, I think that's a no-brainer, especially if you're in marketing. You should be able to figure out how to apply that. And then accounting, that one might be a little bit tougher to figure out, but especially, a lot of herbalists, clinical herbalists, community herbalists run their own businesses, and are small businesses, and they're not accountants, and but they want to know how they can legitimately and safely write off products or samples or all sorts of aspects to business that you as an accountant, knowing the field, knowing how an herbal practice operates, could help someone more specifically, which can be very, very valuable. And then one more note on earlier about having a shop, or maybe starting an herb shop. As Matthew Wood has pointed out, the herb shops that he knows that have survived and done well combine it. Alberto hinted at this, but it is worth really pointing out that the herb shops that have done better have combined the herb shop with another aspect of business. So, for example, he worked for years at Present Moment in Minneapolis. So it's Present Moment Herbs and Books. And they also do workshops. They have people who consult at the shop as well. Another great pairing would be having a classroom, wellness products. I've also seen that, herbs and wellness products. Also having a couple rooms where massage is offered or consultations are offered. So having multiple streams of income is really imperative for a business like that. And maybe they're selling products online at the same time. And then, like I mentioned before, but again, worth mentioning, having some kind of specialty. It feels weird. It may feel like you're pigeonholing yourself, but it helps people identify more specifically what you can do, especially if they don't know what an herbalist, they don't really understand what an herbalist is. If you advertise your business more like, herbalism for fertility, to help with fertility, or herbalism for sports enthusiasts or, something like that, it starts helping people to see where that fits in. And then, well, let's end with a great example with Matthew Wood. He is a prolific writer. We help him with his computer maintenance, and regularly we have had to help him have keyboards replaced. He types so much, he wears out keyboards. And so he has taken that love of writing and being just a phenomenal and prolific writer and combined it with herbalism, of course. And that's how we get the amazing books by Matthew Wood that we just love and appreciate. And so, and like I said, this is by no means an exhaustive list, but hopefully it helped to spark some ideas in your own head of where this can go for you. And also, Matthew and Phyllis especially really encourage, get to know your local herbalists. Join a local class. We offer classes online, but there's nothing like sitting, being right there and in it and getting those experiences. And if you see yourself, maybe you see a path for yourself, and maybe you're just following those gut instincts and those intuitions along the way. If your gut leads you to the Matthew Wood Institute of Herbalism, we'd be very pleased to meet you. Know that until February 11th, through February 11th, you can save $1,000 on our first year program. And it's an extremely comprehensive program. We say that it is self-guided, but there's tons of support online, and we host regular additional classes as well, like Q&As, game nights, and there'll be additional classes that you can participate in so that you don't feel alone. You don't feel like you're just stuck at home studying. There's plenty of interaction, including our wonderful team members like Alberto and Lee. You'll meet them on the site as well. And it's extremely comprehensive. Those of you who join early, we have early sign-up bonuses, included the year one Materia Medica cards. These are 52 detailed cards that you can't get anywhere else currently. All three of these you can't get anywhere else currently. These are the most up-to-date materials from Matthew's work. They're more up-to-date than any of his books currently. And then his 7 guideposts on the spiritual path, a book you can't get anywhere else at the moment. And then also our Forge Fun cards. And so that's an early sign-up bonus. I'm not going to go through this whole page. We put a ton of information here to hopefully help answer all your questions. But we always welcome you to contact us at hello@woodherbs.com. And we're very happy to help answer any questions for you and see how this might be a match for you as well. Again, it's a very comprehensive program. You can also, if this is not right for you at this time, we also have many individual classes that you can step your way into, and we encourage you to explore the site. One more note before I forget. This time around, we're offering an accelerated option. So you can go through the program faster and be ready for the year 2 program, which will be ready in early 2025. So you can take the normal pacing, or you can double up and get through the materials and get on to year 2 in early 2025. Alberto, did I miss anything important? I know there's a lot of other information, but anything blaring and important that I missed?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, it's it's definitely worth highlighting that if this is something that you're interested in, going to the course or the program page and just taking your time to read through it. It is such a comprehensive program that you really want to know what you're getting into. So you'll get a really good idea of all of how comprehensive it is, all of the things it includes. So yeah, go check it out.
As a part of it, always feel free, you put your questions in the comments as well. Those of you who are on live with us on social media or watching the recording. As you can probably tell, I'm working on the posts post-studies business aspect of things. So I'd love to know what's on your mind. What are your questions? So that as a part of the education, we can help prepare you for the next step of your journey as you step out into community and clinical herbalism. So keep the dialogue open. We love hearing from you. Make sure to like, subscribe, turn on your notifications. There's more in store. We'll be here again next week and often. So thanks for joining us, everybody. It was good hearing from you. Those in the comments, I left a few replies already. Good to see you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.